Hey guys, this is Chidanand from Kratz Infotech NG and I welcome you to this short demo and tutorial on code coverage. Code coverage using a freely available tool called Jacoco. Jacoco is a free tool which can get us a very important metrics for any of your projects as long as it is written in Java, and it's much simpler if at all your application is built using a tool called Apache Maven. So what I plan to do is pick up a very simple Java application which is written in Java, of course, and then it is built using a build tool called as Maven. I'll show you how easy is it to configure this particular application to use a Jacoco plugin and then get a very beautiful report that specifies a very important metrics of your project called as code coverage. Then I would use Jenkins as my continuous integration server and then show you how the same set of steps can be carried out to get a similar report on Jenkins. All right, first things first, let me show you what is this plugin that I'm talking about. So if we just search for Jacoco, you will find that it's a very simple tool, freely available, but the only thing is it runs only for Java project. So if your application is written in Java and if you're looking for a very simple tool that gives you only the code coverage at the bare minimal part of it, so this is a tool that you can very easily plug in. There's a lot of information about this tool as to how to plug it in, how to integrate this with something called as a Maven. It's got a beautiful Maven plugin using which you can plug it into your application code, and it tells you how to put your dependency within your Maven POM XML and how exactly to get the reports and stuff like that. You can look at all of this in detail, but what I want to show you is a very simple application and then talk a little bit about what exactly is code coverage. All right, so this is my application. This is a GitHub repository, very simple one at that. There's a source folder. Under this, there are two different folders or packages. One is my main implementation or the application source code. The other one is all my test code or the unit test code. So if I go into my application code, there's something called as a Jacoco example under com training example, and then it's got a simple class called palindrome. So most of you would know what exactly is a palindrome. It's nothing but, if at all, a string. If you reverse a string, if you get back the same result, such type of strings are called palindromes. So this class called palindrome has got a simple method called isPalindrome, which will accept a string parameter and check whether a particular string that is input to it is a palindrome or not. So if you see the source code of this, the whole logic to do this palindrome testing is all written out here. Now, assuming that this is a pretty complex unit uh, unit part of your code for which you would need some testing to be done. So what you expect is your application developer to write a lot of unit test cases which cover basically the exact functionality by passing various types of parameters to your particular application. These should ideally contain all those borderline cases where you pass all kind of dirty strings, numbers, numericals, or some string which I mean you whatever wrong things that you can expect to go wrong with your application, all kinds of such data should be passed to verify whether your application code is working correctly as expected and handling exceptions the way it should be. All right, so that's wherein you would have to write a lot of test cases, and though this is like a kind of a prerequisite for many of your organizations, many people don't write a lot of test cases because developers don't feel that there's a need to check their applications because they had a look at it and everything looks perfectly well for them. There is nothing that can fail with their applications. That's the way most of the developers would look at their code. It's bug free kind of a thing. However, having said that, there is a test case that is written in the test folder, uh, palindrome test. So this is in the test package. So if you look at the test cases that has been used, or the data that is passed around with your application to verify your application code, there's only one simple test case that is put in here. So is just invoking a palindrome, and is palindrome, it is just passing a null string. Now, assuming that this is your application code, you as a project manager would really be interested in figuring out how much part of your code is actually covered by your test case data that is passed along it. Now this is a very important metrics for any project, so that it's a like a feel good factor that tells you that, look, I have so much of lines of code and I have 60%, 50%, 30% or 40% of the coverage. So that gives you a very good comfort level before you start, implementing CI, CD and all the other parts on top of your application. So now, having said that, now this is my source code. This is in a Git repository. The most important part of this project is this pom.xml file. I'll show you how exactly to plug in your Jacoco plugin. So if you see this, there is this in the dependency part of it, you specify that you would need a Jacoco plugin. So here's the dependency part. I've specified the JUnit test cases, and in the plugins part, sorry, you don't have to specify it in the dependency. If you put it in the plugin part, that's sufficient. So in the plugin part, you're going to specify what exactly is this plugin that you're looking out for, what is the actual artifact ID and the group ID, and what version of the plugin do you need. And after that, there are multiple ways of tying it out into different goals. And for me, I would like to tie it to one project phase, which is nothing but a prepare package phase. So if you know Maven, there are multiple ways in which multiple targets based upon which you can run your Maven, or the goals in which the Maven can be run. So I am trying to invoke the plugin only when a packaging is done. Packaging is the topmost goal or the phase of any Maven project. So ideally, I would want all the reports to be created only when the application is perfectly compiled, run with unit test case, everything passed, and your application is ready for packaging. So this is the simple setup that I have, and let me quickly get started on the demo part of it. All right, let me open up a command prompt, and let me make a directory, Jacoco demo, and let me get into Jacoco demo. All right, so I have a simple Windows box on which I'm trying out all these things. I have Java and Maven that is already set up on my particular box, and also Git. So first and foremost, I would need my Git repository. So let me go ahead and clone my Git repository. I'll use the HTTPS URL. Any URL is fine for that matter. I would say git clone. All right, so if I do a dir with the same name as my application source code repository name, I have a folder that is created. So all my source code along with the pom.xml is all here. Now I have already set my path and Java, M2 home and all that stuff. These are all the prerequisite stuff for getting your Maven and Java up and running. So let me just show you what is my M2 underscore home. I already have Maven. This is M2 underscore home is an environment variable specific to my Maven. I will also show you what is my Java home point to. So I've got GDK 8 as well as Maven 3.6.3 installed. You can look at some of my previous demos, which tells you how exactly to configure all those things. So if I say Maven hyphen version, it should typically kick off my Maven and then give me some sort of a version. Yeah, it shows me Maven 3.6.3 is the version that I have, and the corresponding Java is required for Maven to run. Okay, so I have JDK 1.8. All right, so if I do a dir, I have a pom.xml. All right, so all that I got to do is I don't have anything else installed in terms of Jacoco or anything like that. All that I've specified is in the pom.xml where I'm referring to the Jacoco plugin and the version. So I will just do something called as mvn package. All right, so this will compile the package, first do the unit testing. If everything goes well, then go ahead and package the whole part of it. So when the packaging happens, the Jacoco plugin gets kicked up, and then it will go through your whole source code and then show me what are the kind of reports that it would kind of generate. If you see here now, the Jacoco plugin got kicked in, and it is running a jacoco.exe, and then it's analyzing. There's only one class that is there, and that's what it has done. So let us look at what exactly was the report that this guy created. Jacoco demo, Jacoco example. All right, so as and when you run any of these Maven projects, you would find a target folder. Target folder is where all the source, I mean, all the artifacts that are generated by the build gets created and stored. In case you don't like any of this, you just go ahead and delete the target folder. That is what a mvn clean would do. So inside my target folder, there is a site folder. Inside my site, there is something called as Jacoco, and you would find something called as index.html. Or if I open this index.html file with one of my browsers, you would find a very beautiful report that tells me how much of my instructions has been covered, how much of my branches. It does a complete thorough analysis of your code. If you know the complexities involved in analyzing a particular application in terms of the branches that is there, instructions that is there, the paths that is there, and cyclomatic analysis of your project, you would understand this much better. But that's not the intent of this demo. So I already had some source code. I already had written some test cases. So how much of my code has been covered with my test cases? That is the code coverage report that I'm looking at. So if you see this very clearly, it says the code coverage is only 20%. So rest of the 80% of code is all missed out. So let me look at the beautiful report. Palindrome, East palindrome was the particular method that was there. If you remember my source code, so in East palindrome, it gives you very beautiful report as to what got covered, and all this red thing shows that these are all been missed. If you remember the source code for the test case that I wrote, I was just passing a null string and figuring out whether my application is being correctly tested or not. So when the source code is passing a null string, your application hits only this part of the code. This part of the code is never tested. So that is the reason why you see very nice report that very clearly tells me that only this part of my application is tested, and the rest of all this part is not even touched by my test cases. Now this is a really bad report for any manager to look at. All right, so this is as simple as running Maven against a source code, and then have inside your pom.xml have a reference to Jacoco and invoke Jacoco in one of the targets or one of the phases of my Maven cycle. Now this the same project. Let me try to build it using my Jenkins and see if I can generate a similar report. Let me bring up my Jenkins instance. I'm on a Windows box. This is the same box on which I had Java and Maven, where I ran my previous example. So this is my Jenkins. This is a typical CI server that I use. Now my intention is to ensure that I pull the GitHub repository from my Jenkins and then try to run the Jacoco plugin and get some reports on it. As many of you would know, Jenkins doesn't really have to worry about all those things, because the plus point or the most beautiful part of Jenkins is that Jenkins has got all types of plugins to talk to anyone and everyone. So what I want to first check is there a plugin that is available for Jenkins to talk to the um, Jacoco tool. So let me just search for Jacoco, and there looks like there is a tool. If I right click on this and open a new tab, it shows information about this plugin. This plugin is pretty it's an old plugin, has been there for quite some time, and if you see the number of downloads and stuff like that, it looks like a popular plugin that you can kind of trust and use up. All right, so what I will do is I will just click on this one and I'll say install without a restart. I'm on a pretty slow network. I'm having some network issues, so just bear with me for some time, because the plugins are installed, or rather plugins are put out on some of those mirror sites. It'll take some time for the plugins to get installed. And the beauty of all this plugin management in Jenkins is that whatever dependency your plugins would have, all that is taken care of by Jenkins. So let me just wait for this. Typically shouldn't take more than a few seconds, but since I'm on, okay, there you go. I'm on a little bit of a slow network, so it may take some time. So the plugin got installed. All right, now let me put up a job. So let me call this as a Jacoco demo job. This is a freestyle project, though it is a Maven project. I will kick off my Maven scripts later on. For now, I'll just give it as a freestyle project. And what I want is the HTTPS URL of my GitHub repository. All right, so this is my repository source code. This is a Git source code, and I don't really have to give out any credential because this repository of mine is a public repository. But nonetheless, I have this already there. So that's my GitHub repository. I don't mind the master branch. All the dependency for my project is mentioned in the pom.xml file. So I don't really have to worry about doing anything else other than possibly checking how exactly to put out a report once, my Maven, sorry, once my Maven job runs. All right, so that is my source code, and as a part of my build, I would need to put up some build steps. So there are multiple ways of running this. If you see a top level Maven target, this is also fine. Otherwise, you can execute a shell script. All right, so I have multiple Maven versions, so this is what I would choose, and the goal for me is package. All right, now once I package, the Jacoco reports will be put out. So I would need in some way of publishing these reports. So that's the reason why I installed my whole plugin. So somewhere here as a part of the post build action, you will find a step that shows me how to publish the report. All right, so here is it. I mean, here you find that record Jacoco coverage report. All right, most of the things are by default. You don't really have to look at any of these things because it's got the path, and this is the typical path for any Maven project. So this is the source code. These are the inclusions for the Java project and stuff like that. Don't have to worry anything about any of this stuff. You can explore more on this once you get used to this plugin and see if you want to put up some thresholds wherein you want to pass a build based upon how much part of the code is covered and not covered and stuff like that. You can look at all that. For now, I'm only interested in just pulling this using Jenkins and then giving out a report and see if this matches whatever report that we saw earlier on. So that's as simple as my job can be. All right, so I would say save and then let me run my project now. So this goes to the GitHub on my behalf, and using the credential that I have put in, goes ahead and pulls my source code repository and then runs invokes Maven. Maven invocation is through my Jenkins, and if everything goes well, I should see a report something similar to what we saw earlier. As I said earlier, I'm on a real slow network, so it usually doesn't take this long. All right, so the reports are there, and if you come back to the project, now you will see a coverage trend. All right, as and when you have more runs in your jobs, in terms of you have more and more build numbers out here, you would find a trend which kind of looks like a map that shows what was my previous number and what is my present number and stuff like that. And this is a very, very beautiful metrics for any project manager or even sometimes the customers to look at, saying how much in the previous build what was my code coverage, and in the present build what is my code coverage. Now if you see here, this shows the build number. This is the build number one. This is lines covered and lines missed. So I can click anywhere that I want if I want to look at the report and see. This pretty much gives me back the same report that I saw using just the Maven thing run that I had in previously. So East Palindrome, it gives me the same beautiful report. All right, in short, I just demoed how easy is it for me to invoke um, this Jacoco, which is free to use plugin for my Java projects and generate a beautiful report which very clearly tells me from my DevOps perspective or from a perspective of my application how much how good are my test cases and what parts of my application is covered and what is not covered. I hope you found this tutorial useful, and as usual I will leave the URLs of my GitHub repositories that I used in my description section of the video. And if you have any questions or something doesn't run for you, please leave a message and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. All right, thanks for your time and you guys have a great